Hey everyone, this is Toothy, and today I'll be giving my thoughts towards the developer update posted on Monday containing the upcoming changes for the 5.7.0 PTB. In this post, the developers have finally revealed their changes that they plan on making to Ghostface, the Legion, the Hemorrhage effect, Haddenfield, killer difficulty ratings, and patch optimization. So first, what we'll be going over here is the optimization that they plan on doing for whenever you have to download an update. So pretty much up until this patch, what you would have to do is whenever they released an update, you would have to download the entire game rather than a smaller chunk of it. And there isn't really a whole lot to cover here. Basically, all they're doing is they're allowing people to download the updates faster by breaking it up into smaller parts, which means that you'll only have to download the parts of the game that have been changed rather than the entire game itself. So, not really a whole lot to go over there, but let's get into the meat of the post. The first important change that they've made is to the Ghostface, and what they've done here is they provide a couple of basic buffs. The first being that they're increasing the mark timer from 45 seconds to 60, and they're also making it to where a mark survivor can no longer reveal the Ghostface. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of both of these changes, and the reason why is because I don't really see much of a benefit to this. So, in the case of the marked effect, the way that I've always looked at it is, as a killer, whenever you're spending time in a chase, if you have to spend more than 45 seconds, then you're already taking part of a chase that you shouldn't have tried in the first place, or that's a chase that you shouldn't have committed to. And this is especially true for basic M1 killers that don't have any mobility powers or any chase potential that can help make up for the time that they're wasting. Typically, a longer effect time is more justifiable when you have a power that affects everybody. So, like, take Oni for instance. Well, you have add-ons that increase his power duration, which is alright, because the Oni isn't going to focus all his time onto one survivor. He may try slugging, and, he also has mobility, which means that there's a clear reason for him to have a longer power duration. Or in the case of the Shape, he has a global 60-second duration on his power because his power affects everybody. So increasing the mark timer on Ghostface doesn't really make a lot of sense because it only affects one person, and if you're only chasing one person for that amount of time, again, that's not really a chase you should be taking part in. And for the second change, I'm not really a huge fan of the fact that a marked survivor cannot reveal Ghostface. It is beneficial, and it doesn't really hurt him at all, but I do feel as if he's already marked you, he's already accomplished his goal, and there isn't a whole lot of a reason to actually try and reveal him in the first place. The only thing you're really missing out on is his red stain, which you can easily do as a killer by moonwalking. So it is a buff, but it's not really a set of buffs that actually accomplish much. I would have personally preferred it if they went in a bit of a different direction. For instance, adding some layers of strategy to his power, or even rewarding for downing a marked survivor. Some ideas that I think they could have gone for is A, making it to where whenever you down a marked survivor, it instantly recharges his power, so that way you can kind of snowball off of that, which would reward people who down a marked survivor, and it would also encourage you to mark survivors because you'll get your power back much faster than having to wait, let's say, 24 seconds. And another change that I would do is whenever he leaves Night Shroud, I think it would actually be pretty cool if all partially or fully marked survivors are revealed in Killer Instinct for a couple of seconds, which would give him information and give him an idea on what to do. Plus, if you don't down someone who's marked, it's not really like you're going to be able to do it constantly. Like, you would need to wait out your power in order to be able to get the information again. But that's like my thoughts on what they could have done with his base kit in order to make him a little bit better and to reward him for good play, rather than focusing on actually marking somebody. And another thing that I would like to bring up is, while it's a good thing that they are buffing Ghostface, especially while he's one of the weaker killers in the game, I feel as if it's a bad thing that they didn't address the reveal mechanic. There might be a chance that maybe there might be a bug fix that'll cover the reveal mechanic not being super consistent. So I am hanging on to that, and maybe we'll see that in the mid-chapter patch notes. But currently, a lot of people do have an issue with it being a little bit difficult to break him out of his stealth because sometimes it simply doesn't work. And other times, you may start revealing him, it suddenly stops, or he crouches behind an object and it completely resets your progress, which more times than not can be pretty annoying. But those are my thoughts on his base kit and what they should probably look towards instead. But either way, these are the changes that we're getting, and maybe my thoughts will change on them once I've had the chance to mess around with them on the mid chapter. But before we move on to the next set of changes, they've also mentioned they're changing some of Ghostface's weaker add-ons that currently don't see a whole lot of use. The two add-ons that they're showing us here are the drop leg knife sheath and Olson's wallet. And the idea here is that they're either buffing the add-ons or giving them brand new effects in order to make the add-ons more appealing, since currently people only really opt into using cooldown add-ons. So the first add-on here, the drop leg knife sheath, will make it to where whenever you mark a survivor, you gain a 10% movement speed bonus for 5 seconds. So what this means is if you mark somebody, you gain a pretty good burst of speed, and I assume this will help make up for the distance lost from having to stalk somebody, or to allow them to get downs more easily, which is honestly a pretty cool idea. I don't really know how many times this will actually be useful, or how often this will really be a game changer, but this is going to be one of those things where it'll probably be better to see it in action before I give a full opinion on it. But overall, definitely way more appealing than the previous effect it had, which was to increase his crouch movement speed, if I'm not mistaken. And then the other add-on that they're showing us here is the Olson's Wallet add-on, which will immediately recharge Night Shroud whenever you break a pallet or a wall. So this follows the theme of Spirit's add-on that does the same thing, although I don't remember the name of the add-on. So it seems as if they want to have stronger and more appealing effects that do different things. But this is all they're showing us here, and I'd imagine they'll probably give us the rest of the add-ons in the mid-chapter patch notes, so I'll probably be going over that in a separate video whenever we get those. But beyond that, we also have the Legion update, which contains a couple of changes that I actually think are a lot better than the Ghostface changes, because to me, these Legion changes actually address real problems that the Legion has, and it addresses them well. And it addresses them in 3 different areas: lethality, functionality, and cooldown times. Let's go over the cooldowns first, though. So the first thing that they're doing is they're reducing the fatigue time from 4 seconds to 3 seconds, which is actually really good because most killer powers in the game typically feature a 3-second cooldown or less, like in the case of the Huntress or the Artist. So it's actually a really good thing that they're bringing Legion more in line with pretty much almost every other killer in the game in order to make their fatigue less clunky. To add on to the whole cooldown they have, they're also making it to where when you start your fatigue, it'll also begin the cooldown for your power, rather than after the fact, which should help shorten the cooldown times for Legion's Fatal Frenzy overall. Which is actually really good because previously, or at least the way that it works right now, is you need to wait until your fatigue ends in order to begin to have your power recharge, which, with how long their cooldown is, that's an additional 4 seconds for a cooldown that really doesn't need to be that long because what should normally be a 20-second cooldown ends up being 24 seconds, which is a really long time considering the fact that, usually DBD matches don't go on for a whole lot of time. But going on into the lethality here, they're also changing the Legion by allowing them to gain a couple of benefits whenever they chain stabs on multiple survivors. The first change here is that whenever you hit a survivor in Fatal Frenzy, you gain a 0.2 meter per second speed burst, which is actually really nice because this will allow the Legion to be more capable of chaining their hits on multiple survivors. if you were to do this right now, you only move at 5.2 meters per second, which means that it's really hard to actually catch up to some survivors and actually get proper value out of Feral Frenzy. So this is going to be a really good change to help close the gap. And on top of that, another thing they're doing is on the 5th hit in Feral Frenzy, it'll always put the survivor into the dying state, which is a little bit of a concerning change. It does add lethality to the Legion, but I am concerned that they might have kept duration add-ons with this, or, on the other hand, if you're on Getting Meat Plant, it's actually very easy to chain hits on that map, and there isn't a whole lot that can stop Legion from getting to you in order to chain hits. On top of this, I am also concerned that there might be an add-on that reduces the number of hits needed in order to put a survivor into the dying state, which is not an unreasonable concern to have, considering the fact that currently Legion has a couple of add-ons, Frank's Mixtape and the Deep Stab Wound Study, which both make it easier to down someone while you're in Feral Frenzy. I'm really hoping that with this change, they don't plan on making an add-on that will do a similar effect, because I can see that being a real problem if they reduce the number of hits needed in order to down somebody, as it may make Legion way too oppressive. It's part of the whole reason why people didn't really like Legion on their original release, since, whenever you allow the Legion to down somebody with Feral Frenzy, it's not something you have a whole lot of defensive options against, because first, they can vault over a pallet, and second of all, they can vault windows at the same speed, well, not the same speed, but around the same speed as a survivor can. So your options when it comes to going against Legion and getting away from them when they're in their frenzy are very limited. The only thing you can really do in this situation is camp a pallet and hope they sit there until they fatigue. So I'm really hoping they don't have any add-ons that get into that territory, but overall, these are mostly pretty good changes, and it'll actually affect Legion even if you don't chain multiple hits. And a big reason why is by allowing them to move faster and allowing them to have a shorter fatigue, I can actually see Feral Frenzy being a much better one-on-one chase tool than it was before, since you won't have to waste as much time catching up to a survivor, and you won't be in the fatigue for as long, adding on to the same effect, not having to spend quite as much time catching up to the survivor. So overall, these Legion changes are actually pretty good. On top of this, they also plan on making changes to the Legion's add-ons, which will include number tweaks and, of course, entirely new effects, which Legion will also be gaining a new chase theme, which can be modified with mixtapes. So, if you haven't heard already, I'll quickly play the video and give both of the themes a listen. So honestly, that's something really cool that they're doing here, because this means that not only is Legion getting a new chase theme, but they're also going to the level of detail of adding ways to change it, which is honestly not something I expected behavior to do. But as far as their add-on changes go, we'll need to see what those are going to be when the mid-chapter drops out on the PTB next week, either on Tuesday or on Wednesday. But after that, we also have the Hemorrhage Rework. Currently, if you don't know what Hemorrhage does, it increases the rate at which survivors bleed whenever they're injured. And what they're doing with this is they're adding a brand new effect, which is to allow healing to regress by 7% per second whenever the survivor is not healing with this effect, which is actually pretty good. It's a much higher number than I thought it would have been for healing regression, considering the fact that this will regress faster than the survivor can heal, since healing right now is a baseline of 16 seconds, and with this effect, it'll take around 14.2 seconds in order to fully regress their healing. But this is honestly a really good change, in light of all the recent healing perks that have been added into the game, and on top of that, circle healing, which has proven to be very problematic in most games. So, with this Hemorrhage Rework, this will not only make the effect more appealing, but this will also serve as an indirect buff to a number of perks and add-ons in the game as well. So, there are add-ons that killers have, like, I believe the Rusty Head on Huntress. Deathslinger, I believe, has a Hemorrhage add-on, if I'm not mistaken. The Artist has a Hemorrhage add-on. Freddy has a handful of Hemorrhage add-ons. Trapper has a Hemorrhage add-on. Basically, the Hemorrhage effect will actually do something for more experienced players, rather than it being simply just quality of life for either people who may not be able to see the blood very easily, or people who are new to the game that aren't used to tracking in this game quite yet. So honestly, this is a really good change. It shows that developers are aware that healing perks are a little bit too strong, as are medkits. It acknowledges the fact that the hemorrhage effect itself is not very good currently, and they address exactly why that is the case. So honestly, this is an amazing change. This is probably the best change they have in the entire developer update, because this addresses every problem and I don't really see much of a drawback. If anything, this may give way to more interesting effects in the future for future perks and add-ons as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of that. And next we have the difficulty ratings, which are being adjusted. This doesn't really serve much of a gameplay change, so I'm not really super interested in this, especially where I've personally played every killer in the game a fair bit. But for newer players, I consider this to be helpful because they are now categorizing why the killers have their difficulty rating in 3 different categories. First, mechanical skill, and then strategic skill, and finally, uniqueness. So mechanical skill would just be things that you learn over time, like aiming, sensitivity, or control, reaction time, things along those lines. So mechanical skill, for the most part, is just going to focus on how long you're going to be practicing certain elements of a killer's power in order to get good with it. Strategic skill would be more along the lines of planning, so timing, decision making, resource management. Like, think killers like Trapper or the Hag. You could even throw in Twins, because these are all killers that feature some form of strategic play, which usually not a whole lot of killers actually fit into this category, making them very different from a lot of other killers who usually focus on a more direct chase rather than playing the longer game of would it be the micro game, I think. So like the 1v4 game. And then finally we have the uniqueness. So how much the killer's power alters them. So if you look at a lot of the M1 killers like Ghostface, Legion, or Clown, Onryo, killers like that, they're not very different from each other because at their core, they are still basic M1 killers that don't really change a whole lot. Their powers do offer some utility, but overall, most of your hits are going to be due to you getting a basic M1 attack. And so, for killers that are M1 killers, I can see them not being super unique, and they may score pretty low on this. So overall, it may help a newer player know what to expect when they pick up a killer. So, not only what to expect, but how much they're learning and what that skill they're picking up on can apply to as far as other killers go. So, I can imagine looking at an M1 killer, seeing they're not very unique, and then know that their skill can be applied to a great number of other killers that are also M1 killers as well. But finally, on the dev post, we also have the Haddenfield Rework. This is the latest update that they're having in the Realm Beyond series. Basically, I believe the last Realm updates they had were both to the Crotus Front Asylum and the Gideon Meat Plant reworks that they did a while ago. And between now and that set of reworks, they also released a couple of maps, RPD and Area Crows, which are not very popular maps overall because they're both very large maps, and of course, they also feature a lot of tiles that you cannot really mind game very easily. So they're not very popular maps, but with this, with the Haddonfield update, not only will we be getting a visual update, but they also plan on making changes to the houses, or well, the tiles on the map, and changes to the layout of the map as well. I'm hoping this will mean a reduction in the size of the map, since Currently, Haddonfield is a little bit on the larger side when it comes to the maps, but it's hard to really gauge what's going on here because we can only really see the visuals and not what the tiles are going to be. Like, in this one screenshot, we can see two windows and a relatively weak looking palette, but it doesn't really paint a picture as to what the balance is going to be like on the map, like palette density, window strength, palette safety, things like that. The real important parts of the map design. And while this map looks a million times better than it did before, I'm going to save any judgment that I have for until we're able to actually play on the map when it releases. Personally, I don't really have high hopes that they will make the map actually more fun to play on considering the recent map releases, but again, I will hold most of my judgment for until I've had the chance to actually play on this. But these are screenshots they have on what they're changing. With that, though, that is all that we should expect to see changes for the 5.7.0 PTB from what I know so far and what has been told to us so far. And honestly, this is miles better than the last mid-chapter post that they made. The last mid-chapter that we had for the artist basically provided almost nothing, and a lot of the changes were not very well received, whereas these changes seem to be a lot better. It seems as if the developers have a much better understanding of the game and the problems in the game, and it seems like for the most part, they thought a lot about this when they made these changes. I still am a bit concerned in the change that they have with Legion being able to down people in Feral Frenzy, but that is something we'll need to be able to test out, and hopefully not see any add-ons that will make it any easier to do. But I also feel as if the Ghostface base kit changes seem to be a little bit misguided, but we'll see if at least the add-ons are significantly better or not, since, I'll be honest, even if they don't land the plane on the base kit changes, as long as Ghostface has more useful add-ons that are way more fun, way more impactful, and actually change his playstyle, then I could honestly care less about how strong his base kit is going to be or if they made the right changes there. Since, more than the strength of the killer, I value the variety and add-ons they have because you could have a weak killer that has a bunch of different add-ons, and that could be some of the most fun that you'll ever really have, and you won't get bored of it because there is always something different you can do. Like, think of the Wraith. The Wraith isn't really a powerful killer by any means, but he has a lot of add-ons that change the way that he plays. He has add-ons that allow him to break things faster while he's cloaked, add-ons that uncloak him when he destroys objects. He has add-ons that increase his movement speed while cloaked, which also increases the speed that he lunges at when he comes out of his cloak. He has add-ons that make him uncloak faster, add-ons that remove his stealth by making his hero race always play, add-ons that make it easier to track. You know, he has a lot of variety in what he can do. He even has add-ons that modify how easy it is to discern where he's coming from. You know, add-ons that give him the undetectable effect that lingers for 6 seconds, non-directional bell sounds, and silent bell as well. So, you know, the Wraith has a lot going for him, and I'm hoping that when it comes to Legion and the Ghostface add-ons, we'll see the same level of variety as well. Or even the same, the same level of variety that we've seen in the Plague. Since the Plague is another example of a killer who has phenomenal add-on synergy. But before I ramble on anymore and kill my voice any further, I think that's all I have to really cover for now. If you do enjoy the content, please do consider checking out my socials below in the description. I have a link to my Twitter, Discord, and my Twitch. Furthermore, I would love to hear what you all think, so please do consider dropping a comment below and tell me what you think about the mid-chapter, since I'm sure I may not have the popular opinion in a couple of areas, and I would honestly love to see what everybody else has to say about this update. I think no matter what, this is significantly better than the last mid-chapter, but that's going to be about it for now. Thank you for listening, everybody, and I'll see you all next time.